everything we heard about co-parenting today, everything we heard about getting to a place where we can heal and work with each other comes around the word communication. I know that it's one of those things. I tell my children all the time that the biggest commodity in the world today is the person that can communicate. If you can get points across and hear and listen to others, you're going to win. So as we finish up the poll, I want to call our next group of panelists up. I'm excited, guys. We have some great people jumping on here. I'm gonna ask Elsa Marley to jump on, Ed Power and Aaron Claxton to jump on here, because guys, you're about to hear from some more experts in the field, some more people who just truly make it happen. And I'm excited. I'm excited. So as we look, is the poll wrapped up? Let's make sure the poll is wrapped up. And I love it, guys. 34% of us are sometimes getting the chance to eat with our kids. I love the fact that nobody said never. Love that. We still are breaking bread together, even if it's in the back of the minivan. And please don't laugh at me. I do drive a minivan. I'm 55 years old. I'm on my second minivan. I'm a high school football coach. Don't make fun of me. So let's jump in here, guys. And I want to make sure I got Elsa here. I see Aaron. Do I see Ed? Want to make sure we got Ed on. I hope Ed did not fall off. If he did, we'll get him right in here. That just means we get more time with Elsa and Aaron, and hopefully Ed can get here. So guys, as we get into this whole thing around communication, I would love for both of you to take a few minutes. And Aaron, please forgive me. I'm going to go to Miss Elsa first, if that's okay. Elsa, tell us a little bit about you, your work, what you do, and your viewpoints of communication and co-parenting and working on the parenting relationship. So I'll throw it to you, Elsa.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This has been just such an amazing conference to be a part of, listening to all the speakers. James, your moderating is just amazing. I'm so happy that you parents are choosing to invest in yourselves this morning and just really learning how to become the parents that you are supposed to be for your children, and also just taking in the information that is available to you there to be able to continue to grow and help in the ways that you can. So I'm Elsa Marley. I'm an immigrant from Cameroon, West Africa. Unfortunately, I came to the United States because my single father trafficked me, and I end up in the foster care system. And so in the foster care system, I ended up enduring a lot of abuse. In the 13 homes that I was in, only one of those homes was actually suitable for me to be in. And so unfortunately, I not only had unhealthy parenting from my father, and my home environment, but being put in the foster care system, I also didn't get a chance to really see what it was like to truly be loved and to be taken care of, right? And so I was a byproduct of two young parents who, of course, had a lot of personal traumas that they didn't deal with before they brought me into the world. So I end up carrying their pain into my marital relationship and subsequently into my co-parenting relationship when I got divorced from my son's father. It's interesting because I end up almost becoming the statistic that the world would have wanted me to be due to my trauma, but I chose to change that narrative and to rewrite some things in my bloodline. As I started getting healing for myself and for my child, I began to, I went from wanting to seek justice for survivors of sexual exploitation to wanting to help heal other families and people through therapy. So today I'm a mental health counselor, coach, and a pastoral counselor as well. And what I do is I help, minorities and communities of color to have affordable mental health care. And I help people who have struggled with like PTSD, gender identity issues, a lot of depression, anxiety. And what I do is I provide holistic and restorative care to help address just any sort of maladaptive behaviors that they have and to heal relationships and break generational cycles, because that's what we really need when we are thinking about becoming parents and doing what we need for for our children. As a single parent and soon to be teen boy, my son is about to turn 13 next February, and I'm like, I don't know what to do because he's getting ready to go into the 7th grade, and I'm like, what happened? Like, you are 5'8.5", and I'm just like, this is insane. What I do is I have made a conscious decision to be the parent that my child deserves, right? And so I help parents through my Parenting with Purpose course to just learn how to purpose, to parent from a place of purpose, and also for them to work on internal healing, as we just talked about a little bit. My goal is for parents to understand that even when the odds are stacked against them, even when they don't have the tools, that they have a choice to inform themselves in order for them to do things differently. And so when I think about communication as a parent and what it means as a single parent, especially in a co-parenting relationship, communication is the key to everything. Your child cannot develop and grow the way that they are supposed to if you don't know how to communicate with yourself by understanding your needs, and then, of course, communicating with your child's parents, right? A lot of the times we are communicating from a place of pain or a place of past trauma. And my goal today is to kind of help the parents who are out there who communicate from a trauma lens to be able to really put the focus on their children and making their children's interests to be the first thing that they focus on, instead of communicating with the co-parent from a place of hurt and pain and past problems that they've had together. So I'm excited for the rest of this panel, and I'm looking forward to talking more about some of the topics that we have at hand.
Whoa, I think you bring a whole lot to the table, Miss Elsa. Thank you for being here. And then, and I gotta throw it over to my partner and friend, Aaron, so he can share a little bit about his background, what he does, and how communication is filtered into what he does with families and suggestions he has for this parenting process. So Aaron, I'm gonna come to you.
Well, thank you. Good morning, James. Good morning, everybody. My name is Aaron Claxton. I've been a social worker with Montgomery County. I've just started my 20th year as a clinical social worker. In that time, I've worked at Child Welfare Services doing CPS investigations. I've worked in emergency services, providing emergency assistance to families, and also shelter services to families experiencing homelessness. And presently I'm working with the aging and disabilities population in the county. In addition to that, I have maintained a private practice for psychotherapy in the Rockville area. I've done that since 2009. Yeah, so my experience with dealing with parents, a lot of that started with my child welfare experience, investigating families that are brought to our attention because of allegations of abuse or neglect. What I often found were families were under a lot of pressure, different kinds of pressures, employment, financial, familial, community. They often didn't have, the resources, the supports that they needed. And, maybe some decisions were made that, more often than not, they regretted. Overwhelmingly, I found that the families, wanted, to do better and did so. They would thrive once they received the assistance, maybe the knowledge that they needed to parent a little bit differently. And quite often, these are single parent situations, where the person doesn't have the benefit of the financial or the parental support from the other side. And that remained to be true in the emergency services as well. Personally, I am a father of two. Elsa, you said that your child is starting middle school. My youngest is going to be a freshman in high school, and my oldest next Friday, actually 2 Fridays from now, I'm driving him to be a freshman in college. So it's as Bruce, I think, said, it goes a lot faster than you think. Enjoy the time that you have, because it doesn't last as long as you want it to. For my own family experience, I came from an intact family. My father was a single breadwinner, and he worked a lot. He worked, he worked most of the time, and I didn't have a lot of time to spend with him at home. And when I met, my wife, my fiance at the time, we started talking about family, and I think I brought a lot of that, those ideals about, like the man is the breadwinner, you have to work all the time. I really credit her for, pointing out to me how important, family is, and being present for the children's lives and making that, a priority. When you get a family, that should be, that should be the focus of your energy, and the other things that you have in your life should be built around that. And that was a powerful message for me. And I have taken that, and I've tried to be involved in as much of what's been going on in my two boys, lives this whole time, whether they like it or not. We're all still together. They're actually running around the house right now, getting ready for a week-long vacation before school starts. So I've been, pushed into the dungeon in the basement. So that's why the lighting is not so friendly. Apologize for that. But I'm looking forward to sharing my experience with working with families, working with parents, and talking about, it's already been brought up a few times, but communication is so important in resolving a lot of the issues that parents experience, in difficulty in co-parenting and raising their children. So thank you for having me.
Okay, well, we're going to jump into this. And again, I know the participants are locked and loaded. So to let everyone that's participating today know that our Q&A will be saved. We'll try and get to every answer. So for all the participants who are asking, we'll make some announcements that the recordings of this, we've just got announced, these recordings will be saved and on the website. So we'll address all of those things, but know that this rich conversation will not be lost. So for all of you who are trying to take notes and go back to everything and look at some of the resources, we will have them loaded up on the website, and we'll talk about those as we wrap up the day. But guys, this part of this conversation is, I would believe, one of the most difficult, because communication in and of itself is one of those things that everybody looks at different, because you got the person who can overtalk everybody and really thinks they get their point across when most people don't listen to them. Then you got the person who speaks very little and needs to be asked to contribute. So I want to start this off with, if both of you would just share from a communication standpoint, 2 to 3 key things that we need to put as ground rules for communication. 2 or 3 key things that a family that's trying to co-parent, a single parent that's trying to get support and work with the other parent. What are 3 key ground rules to communication? And I'm gonna go to you, Elsa. Let you kick us off, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, so 3 keys that I would say in order to be able to have effective communication. One is to assume that the other parent is doing their best, right? A lot of times we have this assumption that the other parent is not as good enough of a parent as we are, or that we can do it better, right? And so we don't want to hear what their input is or what they have to say, because we are so focused on ourselves, and we're not really caring so much about what they have to say. So listen to them and also assume that they care about the child just as much as you do, that what they have to say is just as valuable. Also, removing offense. So often when we come into a conversation or a communication about children, if there is any past pain or trauma that both parents have experienced, a lot of the times we're coming into that conversation with a lens of offense. So if you remove offense from your communication or from your view or from what you're listening to the other parent saying, it makes the conversation so much easier and more fluid. And you're now not listening in order to try to just respond or to get your point across, but you're listening in order to be able to really hear what the other parent has to say so that you both can effectively co-parent. I would also say the last thing is to listen from a place of love, right? I have to make sure that, and it's not being in love per se, but if I can show the other parents love and honor and respect when they are actually speaking, I don't care if I don't like you, if I honor what you have to say, then at the end of the day, what you say is going to come across to my heart, which is then going to translate to what I have to say to my children or how we need to work with our children. So listen from a place of love, remove offense from the communication, and you'll have a lot healthier conversations with the other parents.
Wow. Okay. Coming to you, Aaron. But Elsa, you said love and like, so they're not the same thing? I've been trying to teach that to my kids for years.
Oh no.
I love you. You will have a place to live. You will have food. I don't like you right now. Get away from me. So Aaron, I'm gonna come to you. Let's hear your 3 keys to communication.
Wow. I'm going to try not to plagiarize Elsa's answers because I thought they were great. I think the first thing that comes to mind is, just I think having a mutual respect for, for the other person. And even though you have, all of my answers are going to involve, like, it depends on where you are in the process, right? So if you're fresh off the separation, that's probably the hardest time to just get together and cooperatively co-parent. But if you can just imagine how hard it is for you, and whether you want to give the other person this, this benefit of the doubt or not, just imagine just mapping that same experience onto this person that you were once a partner with. You once had this respect for them, and you don't know what they're going through, but you know what you're going through. And you should be able to imagine that it's really hard for them as well. And they don't know what they're doing. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it well. And if you were together, some of the things that they would do, you would be forgiving of. And you feel like you want to use that information, as maybe a weapon against them, maybe as data points, to prove that, they're wrong and you're right, and that competition is present. So I think that's the second thing, is to make sure you recognize there's a strong tendency towards competition. This is someone that you have a painful relationship with at this point. They're wrong about something from your perspective. And this is another example. This is another place where, you can show that they're wrong. This is how you are. If you go in knowing that this could tend towards, competition, and you look out for that, you're more likely to avoid that trap. And the third thing just came to me. A lot of the answers that I was getting ready for this today, it's about preparing yourself. It's about thinking ahead. How likely are you to just sit there and, tolerate the tone of voice or the words that the other partner might say while they're talking with you? Can you do it? Can you prepare yourself? Can you not? And if you can't, is there a better way for you to communicate than what you were, than in person or on the phone? It's just getting yourself in the best mindset to have productive communication beforehand.
Okay. Woof. Now, from everything I'm hearing, guys, and you laid out 6 strategies, 6 key foundational points that, and I'm just going to speak that James Worthy at 25 and James Worthy now at 55. I hear you at 55. I get it. At 25, I just wanted to win. If you and I were arguing on something or we disagree with, I want to win. And that was me. I don't know if anybody else, I might be weird, but when the battle came, James wanted to win. And that was who I was. So there was something that I had to learn. And I'm gonna ask you guys to talk about is because communication is not about talking. The biggest part of communication, what I had to learn was listening. Ooh, that was the tough part. So would you guys unpack this thing they're calling that I had to learn, active listening? Because I want to start from there if we're going to get into communication. I'm coming right back to you, Erin, because Elsa's smiling too hard. So I know she got a lot she want to say about that. So I want to come to you, Erin. Active listening. Talk to me about your thoughts around that, your concepts around that, and if that's something you see as necessary in communication.
It's absolutely necessary. So active listening is, is committing to, to hearing and understanding what the other person is saying to you, to, creating a conversational environment where that person feels that they can talk to you and feels that you are understanding them or you're making an effort to understand them. And, one of the desired outcomes of that is that that person will, develop trust in you and then, feel that they can hear what you have to say when it's your time to share. It shows that you respect them. And, even if you disagree, you can get so much further with someone who believes that you have respect for them when working together. As a social worker, we spend a lot of time training in active listening. So, this is a technique that's used in therapy. It's a technique used in interviewing people. And I can't tell you the number of times where a conversation would start out with a lot of animosity, towards me as the worker, as the person, going into somebody's home, invading their privacy, accusing them of, whatever I was there to do. And through the process of hearing them and really just paying attention and, reflecting back when I'm listening to them tell me, trust developed. I can't say that everybody loved me at the end of the conversation, but for the most part, I think, I had very cooperative conversations with people who started off, believing they were my adversary.
All right. And I'm going to throw some stuff at you guys today because I got experts. Because again, I hear you, and to your point, Erin, for everyone that's listening, there are books and resources about active listening, the steps, because man, me at 25 and mad, woo, these turned off. So Elsa, I'm gonna come to you to talk to us about this active listening thing in the heat of co-parenting, and it ain't working the way I want it to work.
James, sounds like we probably grew up in the same neighborhood or something, because listen, I was terrible at active listening when I first got divorced and was forced into this, co-parenting thing. I was like, I know this man is not trying to tell me what I'm supposed to do. He is tripping. I need him to hear what I'm trying to say. All of these things would always come to mind, but I always remember it's like my selfishness. It was always about me, and what I needed, right? And so when I think about active listening for me is the intentionally engaging your mind, your will, and emotions in a conversation, okay? It is listening to understand and not to respond. It is also being willing to sit and hold space for someone without needing to be heard, right? And so what that looks like when you're intentionally engaging your mind, will, and emotions, you're allowing your brain to say, I'm going to use the right hemisphere of my brain to feel the emotions that you are feeling, to kind of be able to emote with you. I'm going to use the logical side of my brain to say, hey, I need to focus more on the reality of what's happening versus any sort of circumstantial things that I may have to say, right? It is engaging your will, because sometimes you don't want to hear what that person has to say. I don't care what you say. What I need you to do is to hear me out, right? So if I have to intentionally engage my will when I'm actively listening, it forces me to have to evaluate myself. It forces me to have to look at my actions and the things that I'm doing in order to make sure that the person who I am listening to is receiving the best parts of me, right? And it's also intentionally engaging my emotions, like I talked about with the right hemisphere of the brain, and being able to emote and feel. Now, a lot of the times because we want to be heard so bad when we are communicating, because a lot of us didn't receive the validation and the love that we needed in our household. So when we come into communication, parts of us are like, okay, well, I just want someone to hear me out. And it's like, no one needs to hear you out right now. You need to sit and listen, okay? You need to hold space for the other parent so that you can understand why they think the way they think, why they feel the way they feel, and why they are making decisions the way that they are making. If we actually took time to really sit and heard the other parent, what we will often find is that they're trying to do the same thing that we are doing, which is love our child just as much as we love them, right? And so we have to really, really remove ourselves from it in order to actively listen and be willing to not need to be heard in a conversation.
Yeah, Elsa, we was on the same street growing up. Elsa, you hit it, and Aaron, you hit it, and I'm in this conversation with you guys because I keep going back. I got to go back to the turbulence of my relationship and me and my wife growing up raising children. So today I'm active listening. I've done social work stuff and I've learned and I can do that. But man, somebody asked on here, and I'm gonna just throw this out. Please, that's how they started the question. Please, how do you cope with a co-parent who thinks his suggestions are final in every communication towards the upbringing of the child? Aaron, you want to jump in on that one? Then I'm gonna come back to you, Elsa.
Other speakers said before, you can't make someone, you can't make someone cooperate with you. You can't make someone communicate. You can't make someone do something that they don't want to do. All you can do is your best. And, really you're the only thing in this equation that you can control. Now, the advice I would give to, each parent is, you may have values that you prioritize for, Ed's calling in. You may have, hey Ed, you may have values that you prioritize in parenting, but you also have now entered a situation where you have created two different value sets for the child that you mutually have. And you have to accept that. And this other person, whether they like it or not, they have to accept it. And, hopefully it doesn't, end up in just constant warfare. And, maybe active listening would be a way to, get to some kind of middle ground, find out where they're coming from. Why do they think that their way is the right way? What is that, what's behind that? Give them a chance to explain themselves. And, maybe if they feel like, what they're saying is being honored, maybe they'll give you the chance to explain yourself, and they'll realize how important it is that, both of you work together.
Okay. Elsa, jump in there. Come on.
Well, I love that question, Denise. I really, really love it, because the parent who is wanting to essentially um, have themselves heard or have the final say in every communication towards a child's upbringing wants one or two things. They want affirmation or they want control, right? And so you can look at that parent and say, what is the history here? What has the history look like between me and that parent? Have they always been someone who is very domineering or is always wanting to control the situation? Or is it just pertaining to the child? Or is it someone who might just be seeking affirmation? Sometimes when the parent is wanting that final say, they're just going, I want to make sure that I feel heard, right? Are they the parent maybe who doesn't have the child all the time? And maybe you're not always communicating all the child's activities. You're not inviting them to the child's, plays or school stuff that's going on. And so they feel like if I tell you what to do, then it's going to help me to feel more involved and to feel like I'm actually a part of this child's life. And so I would say when you hear that from the parent, ask yourself, okay, where's this coming from? Is this coming from a place of control, or is this person needing me to validate and affirm them? And so if they want affirmation, say, I hear what you're saying, but I think that we need to work towards a middle ground and be able to both put our desires on the table so that we can do what works best for our child, right? And there's some people who you're not going to be able to have a conversation that kind of bridges a gap. There's some parents that unfortunately, when you start to put your opinion or when you give feedback, they get very defensive and things get really messy. I would say let them have the win if it's something that is not detrimental to the child. Okay. Too often we want to fight battles that are not necessary, and it actually ends up causing more damage to the child later on, when it's like, remove your pride and just give in for once. Like, is it so hard to just let the other parent have this, part? And I remember I used to be that person who was like, no, if he needs to, because, I'm vegan, and I'm also, there's a whole lot of other things that I practice that for some people are like, Elsa, your life just feels very restrictive. And so I'd be like, he can't eat any meat. And, my son's father, it's like, he's a boy, he needs to grow muscles. And then I'm like, no, you're, giving him all this toxic stuff and he needs to eat. And it's just like, okay, Elsa, what is it going to hurt to let the man feed his child a little bit of beef and chicken here and then, because he believes in his mind that that's going to make him grow and be strong? Okay, let him have it. As long as our child is not saying, I don't want it and whatever, let him have that win. I don't have to have my way all the time. It's our selfishness that often does not allow us to let the other parent have their final say in some of the parenting things that in communication and some of the desires that they want as a parent.
Oof, man, Elsie, you said a mouthful, and I'm about to bring Brother Powell in a second, guys. And I gotta say this, for all of us, a wise man once said to me, it was my dad. He said, James, you can either be right or you can be happy. Choose which one in every conversation. And unfortunately, I grew up with my mother and my father, fortunately, but my mother is a scientist who loves to prove the hypothesis as correct. And I have built that from her. So it's very hard for me to get to the point of right or happy. So, Ed, I'm excited you're here. I pray that our technical stuff, and I want to just thank you, brother, for fighting through and getting on. Come on off of mute and let's see if we can at least hear you clearly. How are you today?
I'm here. Good morning. I'm here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Well, and we want to pull you into this conversation. So here's how we want to do this. First, we're going to ask you to take a few minutes to tell us who you are. Let the panel, let the participants know you and your expertise and what you bring to the table. And then I'm going to throw this right into your lap. In you explaining who you are, I'm going to throw a question that I'm going to ask you to talk to. And
Okay.
As you do this, I want you to weave into who you are and how you do work. The question, how can we come to mutual grounds in different parenting styles? Are there any tools or guides for that? So everybody, welcome Mr. Ed Powell, and I just throw the hard stuff on you, buddy.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So forgive me my tardiness, just trying to work through I appreciate everybody that's here. Hopefully things are going well right now for me. So we're gonna jump right in. So to try to give the answer and also try to give you guys my background. So I've been working with Child Welfare Services for the last 23 years. I'm the Responsible Fathers Program Director. And what that entails, a lot of working with dads and their families, really trying to help them focus. The goal is to focus on their families and whatever that looks like, if it's classes, if it's tutoring, if it's one-on-one, if it's referrals through, the different departments. And so I've been doing that for the last 25 years. And in that time, I've come across a lot of different situations. And so trying to address kind of the different parenting styles. And so we do a lot of work, a lot of work around parenting styles, because there are several different parenting styles. Well, really, we kind of categorize them really like 3 or 4 different parenting styles. But the focus, again, and I think I heard Elsa say it, and I probably heard Aaron, me trying to log in, I'm sure Aaron said it also, is that we really try to come to a common ground where they have the aggressive parent or the passive parent, or we also have kind of the parent that's in the middle. So what we really want to focus on when we're talking about the parenting styles is really the parenting style that is what we would call the parenting style that you use all of your parenting skills. Like sometimes you have to be firm. Sometimes you have to be kind of let things go a little bit, but then you have to know when to use those in the best situations. I think that's where we really the parenting styles really have to come together to try to say, because sometimes it is really important that you may be really upset about the child and the situation, but it may cause for punishment. But also in this situation, they just need a hug. They just need someone to sit down and talk to them. Yeah, they know what they did was wrong. It may not be a punishable situation, but we want to punish them. However, we feel like, well, we want to discipline them. And so, and discipline and punishment are 2 different things. I don't want to go down that road, but I do want to make the distinction that punishment and discipline are 2 different things. And I know a lot of times that we use the language punishment, but that's normally what we do when you go to court and then you have to be sentenced and then they punish you. That's punishment. Discipline means that it comes from a Greek word that means disciplinus. I don't want to go down that road, but it comes from a Greek word that means disciplinus. Basically, it means a follower of a teacher. So discipline, all it means is to teach. And that's what we want to do when we are disciplining our children. We want to teach them, and that's really when you talk about discipline styles, that's what the ultimate goal is to teach.
All right. So thank you for being here, and you're going to continue this conversation with us. And Ed, I do want you to know some accolades came out. Someone said, hello, Ed. You work with my son. Good seeing you again. So Ed, you are making that difference. And I see you got the Bowie State softball. Good luck this season. Excited for you guys. Okay, guys. Now I'm hearing you, and we got all these techniques and these skills, and we're working on communication. We're actively listening. I'm not trying to be right all the time. But now a question that comes up is, and for anybody that's a participant, I'm sorry, I got to announce this. If you're a participant, I know some people are trying to raise their hands. We are going to ask you, please put your question in the Q&A. We're not going to be able to recognize the raised hand and bring you on mic. So we really appreciate it if you were able to interact and put your question in the Q&A. So back to my panel. Here we go. How do you respond rationally to irrational communication from your partner? They're just not making sense. Aaron, want to jump in there?
So one of the things that I said before is prepare yourself. If you have communication with somebody who is, as you would describe it, irrational, that comes from a very emotional place, and it might be that their perspective, their view of the work ahead is clouded by their emotional baggage. to you most likely. Again, how will you tolerate that? Is that a trigger for you? Does hearing them talk about these things, does that make it difficult for you to stay, cooperative, engaged in the conversation, or are you more likely to fall down to, that path of, competition and fighting? This would be, if the answer is, if the answer is it's not going to, you don't expect it's going to be productive, you may want to take it to a different format. You may want to, do written. I don't particularly think texting is much better than talking when things become argumentative. And I'm kind of old school. I had a rotary dial phone as well. So I think email is helpful because it takes a while to write, and you can be concise, you can be precise, you can edit before you send. That might be a way to take, the emotional out of the dialogue. Something else you can do is you can ask them, you can listen, you can find out, how they're feeling, and let them get it off their chest. Be heard, let them be heard. And then, once they get through that, once they do what they have to do, maybe you can bring it back to the subject at hand. And you can say, you can acknowledge how they're feeling, acknowledge their experience. Tell them you don't know how it feels to be them, but you know how it feels to be you. And then it's hard for you also. But you have this thing that you have to do. You have this conversation, this planning, whatever it is.
Okay.
And that's where they are. So maybe they need that addressed first before they can, they can meet you where you want to be.
Okay. All right. Elsa, jump in on that one. How do you respond to irrational issues in a rational way?
I would say with empathy and boundaries. And so what Aaron is talking about when you are kind of mirroring or responding in a way of kindness to the other parent is you're being empathetic towards them, right? You're realizing and you're assuming, okay, maybe they might be going through something hard. Maybe they just lost their job. Maybe their partner, said something rude to them. Maybe something happened that I don't know. And so if I look at the other parent and I am empathetic towards them, which means that you're not necessarily feeling sorry for them, but you're feeling with them, right? Okay, what does it feel like to be in their body right now, so much so that they have to attack me or be so irrational in the conversation that does not even require so much anger and frustration, right? So you respond with empathy, and then you create boundaries. There's some people who unfortunately are always going to be irrational and that you cannot have healthy communication with. And so if you create healthy boundaries for yourself about the things that you will and will not talk about, if you create healthy boundaries around the places that you can talk in or the ways that you communicate with that person, it's going to help you out. If you have a parent that always tries to bring up the past, right, or things that happened when you guys were together, or what they did with the other person that they such and such cheated on, or whatever happened, you have to keep bringing it back to the child, the person of interest at hand, which is the child. Okay, I'm so sorry that you feel that way, but can we talk about this with the child? So what does our son need? Always redirect it back to your children, because if you even give them just an ounce or morsel of satisfaction for what they are wanting to essentially rope you into, it's going to take you back to that place of irrational conversation and causing you guys to be distracted by emotions and past trauma and pain instead of moving forward in the things that your children need. So create healthy boundaries. If you know that you cannot talk to the other parent over the phone because you know that they make your voice so elevated and irritated, don't talk to them on the phone, right? If you know that maybe they threaten you all the time or they say very disparaging things, then you might need to ask the court system to give you to let you guys only communicate through like the like the online system that some counties have where parents have to communicate through that way. Use the measures that you have to be able to protect your peace, and of course also to protect your children from having to live through anything that you wish that you could have, should have, wouldn't have said. Okay, you don't want your child to come back and remember the things that you said badly about their parent because you were in a place of irrational thinking and behavior.
Wow. And okay, Ed, I'm coming to you, buddy. We're dealing with it. We're in the midst of it, and there's some irrationality going on, and you're trying to deal. What's some of the steps and suggestions you would give?
So that's a really good question. And Aaron and Elsa actually say it so eloquently. And I just have to talk the way I talk. So it may not sound as eloquent, but it's going to be, hopefully it will come across similar, or it sounds good. So Elsa hit a lot of the good points and I'm just going to elaborate. And so what I talk about, one of the things you talk about in that irrational conversation is called hitting below the belt. Like when you have those conversations and you know that person is somewhat irrational in their conversation, they may go to a place that you know that's going to hurt. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of prepare yourself and say, hey, and she brought it up really well, that okay, if we were talking about money, then let's stay focused on the money. You know what I mean? If we're talking about the children, let's stay focused and talking about the children. And then also sometimes you have to come back to a conversation. You say, you know what, this conversation is not going, and she talked about those boundaries. This conversation is not going the way, maybe we need to talk about this at a later date, at a later time. And for men, usually we will put it off and then we don't come back to it. Right. So that doesn't mean the discussion is over. That means that we said, okay. And then we have to put a time and a place on it and said, okay, you know what, it's bedtime for the kids. So this is probably not a good time. So can we talk tomorrow morning? At around 9 o'clock. So then we have a plan. And so we kind of work that plan to say, okay, and if the conversation doesn't go in a way that we feel comfortable, hey, we are you ready to talk about this? Because, this is what we planned and this is how we talked about it. So I think really going in with the plan and then understanding that communication takes time. It's not, we cannot just, we can't just run through this conversation. So we have to set a time, whatever that time is, to try to figure out how to successfully get through this conversation.
So if I'm hearing all of you, I want to kind of paraphrase this and put some together just for my own mind. So if I'm hearing properly, going into a conversation, we may need to establish what are we trying to accomplish with this conversation up front. So if it's about money and paying a bill or handling something, then that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to talk to. But I've always understood, and guys, I may sound stereotypical. I told y'all I'm not a doctor, but men often want to get to the solution and women want to talk through the issue. So in healthy communication, if that's the dynamic, you've got to prepare for both sides of that conversation. Because I'll just be me. I'm just going, after about 5 minutes of hearing the same, well, this isn't, I shut down because I'm at, what are we going to do? All of that, what are we going to do? So for people listening, understanding what your triggers are, again, everything that I have to, what is my issue? If I don't listen well to the discussion of how we feel, then I've got to work on that. If I don't get to solution well, I just want to keep going over it, then I've got to work on that. And one of the big things, and I'm going to throw this out there because we're running short on time, and this one is going to open up all of your expertise, because someone said, could you speak to parenting with an ex given a history of domestic violence? Yeah, I'm gonna let that sink in, and I'm looking at facial expressions. I'm gonna go over here to my social worker first. Aaron, I would come to you, guy. And I want all of our participants to understand that the bucket of domestic violence is something that truly, if we start down this road, there is so much that we would have to unpack. We don't have a lot of time. So be mindful and kind that we're giving quick answers to a very deep concept. So Aaron, if you could speak to that.
Thank you. And I do want to be sensitive to anybody that, might have experienced that, that might be on this call. And, hopefully nothing that we, say comes off as, insensitive or triggering for anybody. That being said, I made a note earlier about when the conversation of abuse, was happening in terms of, like what if the other parent is abusive. And something that was a big takeaway from my child welfare experience was that, when just because people, do the wrong thing, even if they do something dangerous, it doesn't mean they necessarily need to be completely dismissed, from their role, particularly as a parent. And if the number one priority is safety, followed very closely by well-being. But if it's possible, to develop some kind of a situation where you can work with somebody, even if there's a history of domestic violence, there are resources in the community. There's the Abused Persons Program. There's therapy if the person is amenable to it. There are things that you can do to try to create infrastructure, to allow, co-parenting to happen. Again, as long as safety and well-being can be, guaranteed, then I think it's worthwhile to, use those resources where possible.
Okay. Ed, let me throw it over to you, man. What's some of your thoughts from I know you do a lot of fatherhood work.
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, I don't want to, I want to be focused on kind of the help and really kind of look at, and I think the question was if they had history, it's kind of what happened, like what kind of services did they do in the history? Have they, been counseling, and Aaron said it, been counseling the APP, have they done anything to help that situation? I mean, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room around domestic violence. There's just not. So I don't want to kind of give anybody any impression anything other than this is a serious issue and a serious concern. And so what I would say, the best way to try to help and figure this out is to make sure that they are seeking help for that situation. And that's that, and I'm gonna leave that right there because I think that's really important to make sure, because there is no you can't go forward if that's still a situation that you're dealing with. It's really going to be hard to go forward.
Okay, Elsa, please.
I would just say, honestly, to make sure that you take care of your triggers, or that you do some sort of self-regulation skills or something to help you manage the triggers that person brings on you, right? Because I know sometimes you still have to communicate with the person who has been abusive to you. Is that the ideal situation? Absolutely not. I don't wish that on anybody. But what I can say is that I'm a huge proponent on self-work, right? And so how can I regulate myself and my body and my mind and my spirit so that when I'm around this person, I don't allow the ways that they have treated me and the things that they've done to take control over my body and my emotions, right? How can I maybe do some meditation, some breath work or something so that I don't feel threatened again in their presence, right? And so again, And if you feel, if the person is still actively abusive, I don't believe that you should communicate with them at all. I don't believe that anyone should be put in a situation where they have to communicate with an abusive partner. It's not acceptable. If they're no longer abusive and you're out of that situation, but they just trigger you, take care of the things that trigger you so that you are able to give room for healthy communication.
Absolutely. And safe and health first and foremost for everybody. And we just leave that there. Also, there are opportunities for if it's not active abuse going on, there's opportunities for mentor mediation. There's opportunities for what they call supervised visitation situations. All of that's there. And that's it. I see. And someone's looking for some advice of a situation. I'm going to ask if my panelists, because I'm running out of time. So to my panel, to my guest who asked the detailed question with some personal information in there, Carolina, I'm going to ask that maybe one of our panelists respond to you directly there. And I know, guys, that look, I told you guys you're going to blow this up. The Q&A is popping left and right, and we're running out of time. And I want to thank each and every one of you for all of our panelists. You guys bring so much to the table. Thank you for your gifts. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for opening up the most difficult part of life. And that's communication and working with other people. I say the world works perfectly until you put people in it. So it is a difficult thing to co-parent, to communicate, but to each and every one of you, Ed, Elsa, Aaron, all E's. I like that. You guys have been great. Let's give them a round of applause for being with us today. Again, guys, the website will be up so we can go back to that website. You'll get these recordings. If my panelists can jump into the Q&A and maybe share one or two final words with some of the questions that is in there, really, really, really would appreciate that from each and every one of you. And guys, I hate to say it, we're rounding that corner. So I want to first of all, thank you for being here today. And I pray that each and every one of you walk away with something, a resource, a nugget, something that inspires you to keep doing the good work you're doing, to keep getting better at the parenting process, the communication process, and to keep moving forward, to keep finding solutions, to use your resources, to use the supports to help you be the best you can be, because ultimately, we're looking to raise children in an environment where they can thrive. So we thank you all for being here. And at this point, I do know that we want to have a few words from our sponsors, and I want to make sure that I get this right. So the first sponsor I want to reach out to, hopefully she is available, is Miss Arlie Wallace, the program manager from the Montgomery County African American Health Program. So Miss Wallace, if you're available, or if your person who's standing in for you available, we'd love to hear from you. Okay. We may be having a little technical difficulty, so I'll go to our next sponsor. I see he's here, Mr. William Kress, consumer leading officer from our incredible financial sponsor, United Bank. William, I'll throw it over to you for a few words, and thank you for all of your support.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the welcome. And are you guys able to hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up?
I can hear you like you're my next door neighbor.
Very good. Well, I logged on a little earlier, and I can tell you, I know you all got a lot out of this panel and discussion and conversation. So we are so proud from United Bank to be able to sponsor this for several years now. And just a little about us, United Bank is a growing community bank, and we're headquartered right here in the nation's capital. Earlier this year, we were recognized among the top in Newsweek's 2022 list of America's most trusted companies. And across 22 industries, United Bank was named the #2. We're shooting for that #1 spot next year, but #2 most trusted bank in the nation. And I'd venture to guess most of you have not even heard about us. You know, a little more about us is we started in Parkersburg, West Virginia, 183 years ago. And to now, you know, out of one office, we've grown to 250 offices across our footprint across multiple states. But all along the way, we've made the effort to grow while staying small, we like to say. Our roots remain in the communities we serve, and the customers that find out about us because of sponsorships like this, because of friends and relatives and coworkers, people that hear about how they're treated at United Bank spread the word for us. And it saves us money on those big flashy advertisements and big celebrities, and we can spend it on local things like this is what we like to do. So United Bank's core values are integrity, hard work, teamwork, and caring. And giving back is something United tries very hard to practice also, with the majority of our employees volunteering time or talents or resources and efforts all throughout the year in their local communities. So thank you all so much for being here and being a part of this panel discussion today. I thank you to all the panel members. It was very, very valuable conversation and time well spent. Please, everybody, go to bankwithunited.com, bankwithunited.com. Find your local office, find out who's there, go meet them, find out what you think, you know, make a friend with a banker there, and we'll be there for you in the future or now or whenever you need us. So thank you again so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and we will see you again very soon, hopefully next year. So thanks.
Thank you again. Thank you and the bank for all that you do to support the community, support Montgomery College, and support this great opportunity for our families to get this information. And now, guys, I want to quickly turn it over to our next speaker. And she's going to share from her background, but I've been practicing, so I want to bring her up, and that's none other than Dr. Javette Lozapone. There we go. I got it right. Dr. Javette Lozapone. Thank you for being with us, doctor. I'm going to turn it over to you. Did I mess it up too bad, or did I get it?
You did good. You did good. Thank you so much. Hi there. I am Javette Lozapone, Director of Student Affairs at Montgomery College. I have the pleasure of co-leading with your host, Miss Beverly Coleman, the Ascend Parent Initiative. And our mission is for Montgomery College to become a more family-friendly institution to ensure students and their families not only feel welcome on our campuses, but also have the supports necessary to excel academically and professionally, all with the goal of intergenerational economic prosperity for families in our community. Our president, Dr. Jermaine Williams, who you heard from earlier, recently sat down with student parents at MC to learn about their experiences and reaffirm the college's commitment to supporting their success. And so we'd like to invite you to watch the full program. And in the meantime, here is a sneak peek.
We know that in order to help transform lives, we need to create equitable opportunities. Right, and in order to do that, we need to hear from our students.
I was just turned 23 years old when my son was born, and you start worrying about things like life insurance, health insurance, right, rent already, right, and you have all these. You start worrying about 529 plans, yeah, like overnight, instantly, you know, and all those things cost money, and you cannot do that on a minimum wage salary, and going back to school gives you that new floor, right? So your floor before you have a degree is $15 an hour in Montgomery County, and once you get that degree, it's a lot more than that, right? So giving my son every opportunity to succeed in life.
So definitely the scholarships from Montgomery College has been a huge asset to my success. The scholarships have actually allowed me to have finances and stability with a babysitter. So in that case, I'm able to use that time to study.
Right.
And I feel that if students are supported, then they will be successful.
MC is providing opportunities where my life is literally transforming, opening the doors directly to job opportunities, internship opportunities, mentorships, these micro-credential badges for these classes that are boosting our resumes up in the field that we want to pursue. Certificate options, and the list goes on. It's something that I really didn't think about, because as a returning student in a much better position, I'm able to receive the information now in a way that I couldn't before. And so MC is turning the tables, honestly. I don't know another school locally that is doing what they're doing. I mean, you have a whole initiative here for student parents? Like, who's doing that?
When we think about intergenerational, right? And we think about, absolutely, right? And we think about, you know, children seeing their parents thriving, right, in a post-secondary education experience, and they're like, yeah, I see that. I can do that, right? I know the power of that. I'm a first-generation college student. I saw that through my brother. I didn't get a chance to see that through my parents, but I know, and so many of us know the power of, you know, kind of younger individuals, especially if they're your kids, you know, seeing what you're doing, seeing the recent graduate walk across stage, right?
Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Jabet, Dr. Jabet. It's amazing to hear the things that are going on. And as we wrap up today, guys, I am filled. I get to take this feeling out and continue this conversation. But I also, for me, the takeaway is, I was going to jump right out of here and go into my day. And my kids are walking the dog and feeding the dog, and I'm texting them to tell them to do these things. But I want to slow down a minute and at least have a conversation just to communicate, to understand that all of what was shared today, everything that this is doing was for what those young people said on the screen, for us to be better, for us to make sure that our children get the best. So remember that we're going to ask you to share this information, the website, the YouTube. We're going to talk to you all about that, because I want you to know that all the content, all of the videos, once it's prepared, will be put up on the website. And I want to make sure you see that and you get that. The Montgomery College Montgomery College website, where you can go to the Inspiring Parenting page. You'll be able to see this. It's the MC Ascend page. You can watch the videos, you can watch the recordings of this. You can also hear get the resources to see things that people have shared. This is where this is going to live, but don't keep it to yourself. Share it with some other people. And also remember, for the first 60 people who attended, who registered, and they watched this, you're going to get $30 total of Target gift cards. Your registration and attendance name must be the match as your email, and everything you use to register. Winners will be notified the week after the conference. The gift cards will be sent to you via email. The email address you use to register must be the email address that you have available, and the gift cards will be sent from fathersmatter.org. So make sure you're looking for an email. Make sure if it goes to your spam, fathersmatter.org. Please allow 3 to 5 business days for the electronic gift card to be delivered. And again, this has been recorded for you to look at, share, and put it on social media. Put it out there to someone that you know may be able to benefit from this information. So on behalf of Montgomery College, on behalf of Dr. Williams and the incredible team that put this together, I want to say this. I know she's off camera, but guys, sometimes we got to give people their flowers in front of the room, not when they're laying in the casket. And I want to say to Beverly, come on turn your mic on. Turn your camera on, Beverly, please. I want to say personally, thank you for you and the committee's effort, for keeping all of us in contact and keeping us guided, and for putting on something that I think was absolutely seamless and something that was so powerful. So Beverly, to you as we end today, I'm going to ask us all to give Beverly and the team a round of applause. Come on, mute. Everybody's on panel. Come on, turn on those cameras. Turn them on. Come on, turn them on. 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 And let's say thank you. And to all of our participants, thank you for your time. You guys have been great. And this is James Worthy. And if no one has told you they love you, I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you all. Beverly, thank you so much.